Hi guys, Sam here. If you're tuning into our channel, there is a good chance that you have already heard of this thing called FIRE, or Financial Independence Retire Early. This movement is really groovy, it's really cool, and it's really popular amongst people who want to get out of the rat race and who want to actually retire early and enjoy their life instead of working it away for their boss or for a big company. So for us, FIRE is really important. We caught onto it about 4 years ago, and it totally changed our mindset and changed our goals. So what I want to do in today's video is to share with you the very basics of getting started with FIRE, understanding what it is, understanding how to calculate your FIRE number, and giving you a few kind of tips and important red flags that you need to be aware of when you are thinking about your own number of what you need in order for you to actually retire. Hi guys, I'm Sam. Thanks for tuning into our channel where we explore achieving wealth and financial freedom through a three-part strategy. Earn more, spend less, and invest the rest. Today's video is all about FIRE. So let's get started with this basic question around FIRE, which is, how much money do I need to retire? That's a question that actually Chris and I get asked a lot from our friends and from our family, and even from our friends and family who are in the older age bracket, maybe in their 50s and 60s, trying to figure out how much money do I actually need before I can retire. So FIRE is a great way, as a rule of thumb, to figure out what that number is. Now, there's two really important concepts when it comes to this idea. One is the number itself and making sure that you calculate it correctly. And two is understanding that when we say this is your number in your bank account, it's not actually your number in a bank account. It needs to be your number in an investment account, because one of the core principles of using this as a retirement mechanism is that you have this account with your number in it, with the amount of money you save. Maybe it's $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, whatever it is for you, and I'll go through that equation in just a second. But basically, you need to have that money invested, because the idea is that you will pull a certain percentage from that fund every year to cover your living expenses. And you want to do it in a way that when you pull that money, it does not diminish the account, because we don't want the account to just dwindle down to nothing. We want to make sure that our ratios add up so that as we pull money out of that account is still large enough that as you continue to invest it and get those returns on your investment, it's going to stay at least the same size. So let's dig into the numbers. So basically, there is a rule of thumb that you can use called the 4% rule. And it is a theory that if you have an investment fund, just like what I was talking about before, and you pull 4% every year to cover your living expenses, as long as that investment fund is invested in stocks and bonds and it's somewhat conservative, that number of 4% is going to make sure that you don't pull out so much that you're going to deplete your fund. So 4% is a number that most people use as a rule of thumb for getting started. Another way that you can do this for your easy calculations is by taking your living expenses and multiplying them by 25. So a multiple of 25 and 4%, the math is similar and it adds up. So if we were to use those ratios and take an equation, let us say, for example, that you have determined that in order for you to live the lifestyle that you want, your living expenses are $60,000 per year. And that includes everything. That includes your mortgage, your food, your travel, whatever. Whatever's included in your living expenses totals to $60,000 per year. In such a case, if you were to take that number and multiply it by 25, you would get 1.5 million. So if 60,000 is your living expenses, then your retirement number, based on multiplying by 25, is going to be 1.5 million. Now, if you were to do that in reverse, and you were to take 1.5 million and times it by 4%, that's going to give you 60,000. So either way that you like to do the equation, it's going to work out the same. So if we were to take that example and look at duration, or the length of time to get there, 1.5 million is what you need to have in your investment account in order to retire if you want to live off of $60,000 a year. So let's break that down into years. So let's say You say, you know what, Sam, I'm 30, I want to be retired by the time I'm 40. That gives me a 10-year window to get to that number. So if you're starting from zero in your savings account and you want to get up to 1.5 million, then that means that you are going to need to save $150,000 a year. Now, for a lot of folks, that is a very daunting number. That might be more than what you can currently save. What I would encourage you to do is look at ways that you can generate more income for yourself, look at different ways of having passive income, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what the numbers break down into. Now, if you were to double that and say, okay, I want to give myself 20 years to retire to get to that 1.5 number, then that means that you're going to need to save $75,000 a year. And if we were to spread that out even further and say, okay, I want to give myself 30 years, that breaks down into $50,000 a year. Now, all of these numbers, they may seem large to some folks. Maybe they don't. If they don't, that's awesome and I love your ambition. But the reality is, this shows you how important it is to live below your means and to make sure that you are saving money, and not only saving money, but you are investing that money, which again brings us back to why Chris and I are always talking about this triangle. You've got to earn more, you've got to spend less, and you've got to invest that money that you have left over. So utilizing that cycle is really how you actually get to this. Now, there are some important red flags or things that you need to understand when you are calculating your own retirement number. Now, what I just gave you was a very, very simplified example. It does not count for things like inflation, and that can be a bad thing because as inflation goes up, cost of living will go up. 20 years from now, a gallon of milk is going to cost a lot more than it does today, and the same goes for everything. Housing is going to cost more, so you have to make sure that you are accounting for inflation. Another thing that can really change your number is the lifestyle that you want to have. I know personally for Chris and I, the lifestyle that we have now, we want to have a better lifestyle in 10 years and then a better lifestyle in 10 years after that. You know, we want to make sure that as we age and get older, we can have a more luxurious lifestyle. We really want to enjoy life. We believe in delayed gratification. And so for us, when we are calculating our F.I.R.E number, we actually take it in phases. So we say phase 1, okay, we're going to need this amount of money to live off of. But then once we have certain investments working, once we've grown our wealth, then we take it to phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4, etc. So it's really important that you are honest with yourself about what your goals are for your living expenses, both in the short term and in the long term. You know, think about how do you want to live when you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Make sure that you incorporate that into your numbers. So if you want your lifestyle to be more elevated, you need to elevate your expenses as well. Another thing that can be really detrimental for a lot of people is emergencies. So what I say is a rainy day fund. So for Chris and I, it's really important that we put a pretty big chunk of money aside and we never touch it. We don't put it in our investment portfolio because we know that stuff happens. We've had a couple of medical emergencies. We've lived overseas for a while and there's been things that have hit us and all of a sudden I needed a surgery and it was $15,000 out of pocket. You know, so things like that, they happen and you have to be prepared and account for them. So it's really important that when you are calculating your number, you also make sure that you have that rainy day fund because you never know when something can hit you and it wipes out a big chunk of your money. Okay, so I just hit you with all of the red flags. Now I want to give you some good news as well too. The example that I just gave you does not account for compounding returns. Now, Chris and I are going to do a whole separate video on compounding returns, but basically, in a nutshell, they are the best thing in the world. It's the idea that as you invest, the return on that investment goes back into the original pile and will continue to grow and grow and grow, and it's compounding. And when you hear people say like, oh, how I became a millionaire or how I earned $10 million in 5 years, it's because of compounding returns. So compounding returns are amazing. For the purpose of this example, I have not included them in the numbers because I wanted to give you an introduction so that you can get a basic understanding of how the process works and how you figure out your retirement number. But compounding returns are amazing and I haven't accounted for them in this video. So The last thing that I want to do is I just want to touch on two things related to expediting the process. So everybody is always looking at ways that they can retire early. So the two main ways that you do that to expedite the process is you have to earn more and you have to save more. And when you do those two things, you are creating a much bigger pool, and then you've got to actively participate in your investment strategy. So for example, if you say, okay, I'm going to be super passive and I'm just going to expect returns of like 4%, that's not going to expedite it. You're just going to have to wait year after year. So for Chris and I, the goal that we set for ourselves every year is that we control our investment portfolio, and what we want to have is a cash on cash return of at least 15%. So whatever the investment is, whether it's in the stock market, whether it's in real estate, whether it's investing in a small business, if it's not going to yield us a cash on cash return of 15%, it's not something that we're interested in. Now we have to work harder to find those investments, but we're also very ambitious in our FIRE number and in terms of the kind of lifestyle that we want to have down the line. And so that's what works for us. Now, on the flip side of that, you can also expedite this process by scaling down your living expenses. So I know lots of folks who have retired early and they have moved to like Panama or Costa Rica, and they know they can have an amazing lifestyle outside of the US for like $30,000 a year. And when they take that and work that number into it, they go, well, shoot, I can retire a lot sooner than I thought I could. And so for you, it's a really personal choice. What do you want? Do you want time? Do you want more glamorous things? Do you want to fly first class on airplanes? Or do you want to have a beautiful, quiet life on a beach in Panama? So this idea about retiring early is super personal. Everybody's going to be different. But I hope that the information that I shared with you is useful in terms of getting you started and in terms of helping you to wrap your head around the concept and doing some of the basic math. So we will dive into this in a lot more detail in future videos, but until then, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to our channel, give this video a like, leave a comment below, and we will see you next time. Remember, earn more, spend less, and invest the rest.